Okay, I am back. So now we are going to talk about what the next step would be with the fabric. So I have all the rectangles and the squares sewn together and cut and the blocks I put together. So I decided to add white to one side of the longer end of the rectangle blocks. So this is what it looks like. So I chain pieced them so they all look like this, going down the line. And then I will cut it. I think first I'm going to iron them, press it, but I'm going to press it with the white going to the dark side of the fabric. Then I'll cut it so I can make sure that white fabric is straight. Because a lot of times if you cut before you press, well, at least with me, I find that my fabric gets a little wonky. So I'm going to press first and then cut them apart so they'll be separate. And so then when they are cut apart, this is what they will look like. So it'll be the fabric on the top and the white border at the bottom. So then after you do that, you are going to sew all of these together. So it would be 4 columns going down. So it'd be 1, 2, 3, 4 columns that look just like this going down. So this is one column. So they're all, and this one has been trimmed on the sides to even it up, because you're going to have to do that because it's not going to be the same on both sides. So I trimmed that up, and I used this middle triangle to square it up so it'll be the same on both sides. So with that, I used my ruler and I went 3.5. I went in, let me see if I can show you. So I laid it down and I went 1, 2, 3.5, and I lined it all the way down through all of the triangles, those center triangles. So pretend there's fabric left over this way. So 3.5, and whatever fabric was left over this way, that's where I cut. So then when I was done on this side, I went to the other side and did the same thing. 1, 2, 3.5. Put that half mark in the center of all of the triangles going down the strip. Then I cut off the excess fabric on this side. And that left me with a column that is even going all the way down on both sides. So I'm going to do that to all of the other column, well, the other fabrics, so I end up with 3 more columns that look just like this one. Then when I finish this, I already have my strips cut for that's going to go in between the columns. I cut them at, what did I cut them at? Because the pattern is, I'm doing is totally different than what the pattern is that came in the Sew Sampler box. Because I know it wasn't going to be big enough. So I'm trying to extend it, so I'm adding more fabric to it. So with that, so that's why I have all the columns, and then I'm putting the strips in between, and then there's going to be a border going all the way around. So the strips that are going to go in between each column is 2.5-inch strips. And then the borders going around all 4 sides would be, I think I cut them at 3.5 inches. But I'll come back to it and show you when I get to the 4 borders that go around the whole thing. But for now, I'm finna go finish the other 3 columns that look like this. Also, while I'm going to add that 2.5-inch strip in between these columns. And then when I come back, it'll be time to add the borders around on the sides and the top and bottom. So I will be back. Okay, I have the camera at the at my sewing machine, so you can see some of the embroidery that I'm going to do on the bottom portion of the quilt for on the border part. I did embroidery on the top part of the quilt. I put the baby's name up there. My intention was to show that part, but I got distracted by trying to line up her name because all of her name wouldn't fit into my hoop. Because I think this hoop is like a 4x4. So it wouldn't embroider her whole name the way I wanted it. So I had to break it up. And so I got distracted by that and I forgot to turn the camera on. So what I'm going to embroider on the bottom portion of the quilt is my label. You know, when you give out a quilt, you always want to label it or try to remember to label it so they can always have something to remind them of who gave it to them and possibly what reason, the date, and the year. So that's what we're going to do now. I'm going to put Quilted with Love by your grand auntie Faye. And then I'm going to put the date. I already have my message in the machine, so I'm going to let it go for a little bit and then I just fast forward through the rest. Okay, we are back at the ironing board, and these are two of the strips. These are the strips that have the borders for the quilt that have the embroidery on it. So this is for the bottom of the quilt, this strip here, because it has my label that I embroidered on it. I don't know, let's see if you can see that. It says Quilted with, the W is with love by Auntie Faye, which is me. That's my middle name. And today's date, May 16th, 2019. So this is going to go on the bottom of the quilt. So this is I believe this is a 2.5 inch strip. And this green, this light green and this white, they are both 1.5 inch strips. Because I felt like it needed some color to break up all of that white. So that's for the bottom. And then this is going to be the top one, the top border. And this is the baby's name. Her first name, last initial, and I did 2 decorative designs on the side of her names. And the thread is the same color as it was close enough to the same as the green border that's in there. So that's her name. Her name is going to be Zanaya. So now all we have to do, and then I have my other 2 strips for the side. These are the 2 for the side. So these are my 2 borders for the side. This is the top and the bottom. So now I'm going to sew this onto the quilt. I'm going to add the borders to the quilt, and then when I come back, I will show you the completed quilt, so you can see how all 4 of those previous columns that I talked about, how that all came together. And then you'll see it with the borders, and then after that we can sandwich it, put the backing on, and then quilt it up. And of course the binding. So I will see you guys after I sew the borders on. So I know I said that I was going to piece the borders on off camera, but I thought about it, maybe I should do that on camera so you can see that done. So we're gonna do the side borders first, and I have the quilt laid on my ironing board, and this is one of the side borders, and you're just gonna line it up with the edge of the quilt, which everything is even, so it's going all down the quilt, and then we're just gonna pin it. We're going to do both sides. And there's no seams that need to be matched up here, which, to be honest, is my favorite kind of quilt. When you don't have to match any seams. It's the easiest ones to do. So just take a bunch of pins and pin the border to the quilt. Now some people can sew this on without the pins, but I want to make sure that it's enough fabric to cover the whole side, because if you don't start in the right place, by the time you get to the end, you don't have fabric left to finish off that side of the quilt. So I figured it's best to lay it out, lay the quilt out, then lay the board out. That way you know that that strip is going to cover the whole quilt, that whole side. So just put a bunch of pins going down the side. So we have this side pin. So I'll probably fast forward through the other side. So, but we need to flip it so you can get a look at how the quilt is, how the quilt top is looking. So this is how it's look. This is how all the columns look, and it has sashing in between the columns. So it's 4 columns that look like this, going down this way, and then each of them have the white sashing in between them. So now we need to pull this over so we can get the border on this side. And then I'll measure it at the end so we can see exactly how big this quilt is. Okay, the other border. And you want to pay attention to how you put it on there, because you want the wider of the border to be on the outside and that thinner strip on the inside. So that means it will go like this. So if it's going to go like that, you flip it over. So when you stitch it, that's how it'll look. Just line it up, make sure you got some fabric hanging off that end. Then make sure you have some fabric hanging off of this end. And then you get the pinning. Okay, so I'm gonna stitch this up real quick, and then I'm going to cut off whatever extra fabric is left at the end once I sew it down and press it, and then add the top borders, and then when I come back, it'll be time to sandwich it and put the backing on. So I'll see you guys in a minute. We have a few more steps before we are done. I have went ahead and I have did the quilt sandwich. Now the quilt sandwich, just in case you don't know what that is when you have your backing. This is the backing. This green is the backing. And then you have the batting, which is the middle, and your quilt top, which is this part, what we've been working on all this time, which is this, the decorative part, the quilt top that makes your sandwich. So I have done all of that. So once you have that all together, then now it's time to baste it, to pin it together. 2 ways you can baste it. You can pin it or you can spray baste it. Now the first time I did a quilt, I spray basted. I don't have any spray, so I'm going to pin baste it. So basically that's just like how it sounds. You take the curved pins and you pin all over, and that's to help keep all the pieces together as you stitch all of the 3 layers together. That's whether you're free motion quilting or you're going to just straight stitch. So I'm going to use straight pins. Well, not straight pins, the curved pins, I'm sorry. But I need to put a few more pins because there's some areas where I didn't put pins, but because I wanted you to see where some pins could go, because there's some areas that don't have pins. Because see, like here, there's no pins here, which could definitely use some pins, because if you go to quilting here and you're moving your fabric around, you could do a lot of shifting and then it'll get bunched. Hi guys. So when you last saw me, I was talking about basting the quilt, but my camera died and I did not realize it. So I just decided to go ahead and quilt the sandwich, and I decided to stitch in a ditch around the rectangles, the rectangle blocks, and I did the binding. So the quilt is complete. Now what you're looking at now is the original pattern that we were doing, the Brookside Quilt Pattern. And like I said, this is the pattern reworked just a little, because I added the sashing in between each column, which you could see the original doesn't have the sashing, but I needed this quilt to be bigger. So this quilt now measures 40 by 57 inches, and this one was supposed to be 30.5 by 35.5. So it's a little bigger. So this is the finished quilt. I'm gonna pan around so you can see the finished quilt. Then that is the bottom of the quilt with the Quilted with Love and by Auntie Faye. You probably really can't see the names and stuff because that thread kind of blends with into the fabric. You can see it better in person. So that's the bottom. And so then if you pan out, this is the whole quilt. That's the whole quilt. So it is done. We are finished. And now I can get this mailed off to her. So this is the tote bag that I made for the quilt to go in. It's pretty simple. It's just a simple quilt, tote bag that she can put the quilt in when she's not using it. And I didn't have enough fabric left to use more in the tote bag, so I just used the fabric that I did have left, and I made use it as a trim at the top. So that's on both sides. So if you flip it over, that's the other side. And it's just big enough for the quilt when it's folded. So she always has something to store it in. I think both things came out pretty nice. I'm happy with it. And I think she's gonna like it. I need to show you the back. So this is the back of the quilt. It's, like I said, it's pretty simple. You can see the outline of the rectangles that I quilted around when I stitched in the ditch. So that's how it looks on the back. Going up the whole quilt. That's the only part I did, was I stitched in the ditch around the rectangles. And then I just did the binding. And that is a wrap, people. We are done. So now I can get this all packaged up and get it sent off to my niece. So she'll have it for the baby. So thank you guys so very much for watching. I so very much appreciate it. And please do me a favor and hit that like button. Subscribe if you aren't subscribed already. And hit that bell so you can see what I'm up to next. And I will see you guys in the next video. And remember, please take a little time to do something crafty. Bye.